Earlier this week, in an Ipswich shopping centre west of Brisbane, 63-year-old Coles supermarket worker and mother of two, Claudia Campomayor Watt, was stocking a fridge in the supermarket when a 13-year-old boy allegedly took a knife from the store's shelf and stabbed Miss Watt in the back. Sorry, I have to say allegedly, because until the boy is found guilty in a court of law, he is presumed innocent, although he has been charged with attempted murder. The boy tried to flee the scene, but luckily members of the public and security staff restrained the boy until police arrived. It is reported that the young teenager was living in a care home, was known to the Department of Child Safety, and had complex needs, receiving support from the National Disability Insurance Scheme. Luckily, Ms. Watt is now believed to be in a stable condition. But what I'd like to focus on in this video is the reaction from Coles. As we've come to expect in modern society, why have a thoughtful, carefully considered reaction when you can have a knee-jerk reaction instead? Coles banned sale of knives across all Australian stores after stabbing attack. My first reaction to this announcement, and I guess the reaction of many of you listening, would be, that won't do a damn thing. Let's think about it rationally for a second. Will Coles not stocking knives stop bad people from getting hold of a knife and walking into a Coles supermarket and doing something terrible? No, of course not. Figuratively speaking, knives are a dime a dozen. I've got dozens of knives at home just lying about. Well, not lying about, stored safely. But the point is, I'm not even into knives, but yet I've still got a heap of them. People give them to me as gifts or whatever else. Obviously, other shops and supermarkets legally sell knives. Unless Coles are planning to install metal detectors at every supermarket entrance, as well as frisk every customer on entry to discover non-metallic ones, then their little exercise is just an exercise in futility. Yes, the ABC now have a category called stabbings. Obviously, Coles are just trying to show they're doing something. To be fair to them, they did release a statement saying, Coles complies with all legislation regarding the sale of kitchen knives, and this withdrawal is being taken out of an abundance of caution as we conduct a review. Okay, so it's probably not a permanent ban. They're probably just trying to figure out how to sell their knives in a safer way. Interestingly, Coles are still giving away knives as part of their SMEG promotion, although they did note that this will be ending on the 21st of January. Recently elected Queensland Premier David Crisafulli was elected at least partly due to his tough-on-crime stance, specifically his flagship adult crime, adult time policy, with the laws actually being passed last month with bipartisan support. The new laws mean youth offenders aged 10 and older who commit one of the specified serious offences will be handed the same penalties as adult offenders. For example, murder carries a mandatory sentence of life imprisonment with a non-parole period of 20 years, doubled from 10 years. Of course, this tough-on-crime approach was hugely popular with the electorate, with 9 News finding that 93% of voters supported the legislation, noting that this was just an online poll, which aren't typically considered very scientific, as they only reflect the opinion of visitors who choose to participate. But nonetheless, adult crime, adult time was an election winner. Of course, there were many critics of the laws, with SBS reporting, UN slams Queensland laws as a flagrant disregard for children's rights. National Indigenous Times, New Queensland Government's adult crime, adult time policy flies in the face of all evidence, Amnesty warns. Basically, they claim that the new laws are a breach of human rights, will increase reoffending, cause harm to traumatised children, and entrench disadvantage. Maggie Munn, Director of First Nations Justice at the Human Rights Law Centre, told SBS, "These laws are terrifying for our children and our communities because most of the kids who will be subject to these shameful laws will be Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander kids ripped away from families." Despite the severity of the crime in this instance, surprisingly, attempted murder is not one of the specified offences, which for an adult at least holds a maximum penalty of imprisonment for life. Of course, former Premier and Leader of the Opposition, Stephen Miles, couldn't resist having a dig. Slogans without substance. Miles attacks Premier's landmark youth crime laws. He said, "The experts said there would be unintended consequences by passing legislation that had not been properly and rigorously tested, but David Crisafulli rushed these laws through regardless, promising crimes like this would stop once the laws were introduced before Christmas. The horrendous incident this week has shown that David Crisafulli is running a government on slogans without substance." The Premier has admitted that any future changes to these laws cannot be applied retrospectively, so this teenager will not be facing so-called adult time, and instead will be sentenced under current guidelines for children. To be fair and realistic, I don't think young offenders will honestly give two hoots about any of these new laws, in that they probably don't even know about them, as I doubt they watch the news. These laws are probably designed more for a sense of justice for the community, rather than actually deterring mentally ill or drug-induced teenagers who are willing to commit the most horrendous of crimes. Either way, Coles have banned the sale of knives in their stores. Interestingly, according to the ABC, they've also pulled their support from regional LGBT festivals. I don't know if that's relevant, but I thought I'd throw it in there. Obviously, Coles sell other things that could also be considered dangerous. What about a pair of metal scissors? Nobody could argue they're not equally as dangerous as a knife if somebody wished to cause harm with them. Should Coles take them off the shelves? What about a metal fry pan? I'm sure if somebody was hit over the head with that, it could cause a lot of damage too. Or a fork? Where do we stop? The thing with knives, they're a very simple tool. You can pretty much fashion a knife or similar object from pretty much anything. Just look at the contraband found in prisons. Banning knives is a knee-jerk reaction and is actually only treating a symptom of an underlying cause, which I won't go into too much detail here, but I guess involves neglect in the homes of troubled youths, not to mention light sentencing and bail laws that seemingly allow children to repeatedly reoffend without consequence. Look, I agree, safety is important, but so are our freedoms. Frequently, our rights are eroded under the guise of safety, and we accept it thinking it benefits everyone, until we eventually wake up one day and realize we've got no freedoms left, because absolute safety is simply not possible. There will always be nut jobs out there willing to pick up an item and bonk somebody over the head with it. Look, I'm not saying knife crime isn't a serious issue, but will bans do anything?